Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Niasim. Thank you so much for the support. Hope you all are doing great. Why, a lot has really been going on. The Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, came out to with her own problems because that is a huge problem. Sometimes I look at the people that were elected as a part of this presidential this thing. I do not see, they don't know anything. They are not even supposed to be in the position they are in, but they found themselves there because they are going to help with the racism that is going on, and they are also pushing it. I want to tell black people that they have been really working so hard, because this is what I call overtime work, to make sure that your history is perished. But one thing I know for sure is that black history is beyond classroom history. A lot is going on. Indoctrination is also about to happen. I feel really sad because I don't know what your kids will be learning in school these days. Now it's kind of making sense why they made this woman the CEO of Turning Point. All I can say is that if you are able to have your child homeschool for a while, that will actually be great, because what is going on now is a little bit, and I saw they are seriously coming for black people and other people of color, but other people of color are not my problem. Black people are my problem. But one thing I know for sure is that you have been winning them and you will still win. Let's get into this video.
The U.S. Education Department is uniting with conservative groups to create patriotic civics content. These folks calling it the America 250 Civics Education Coalition. The project will be overseen by the Education Department and led by the America First Policy Institute. It's a nonprofit conservative group. It includes Turning Point USA, the Heritage Foundation, and Hillsdale's College, as well as other conservative state and national organizations. Oh yeah, our kids shouldn't be taught all type of romanticized, sanitized concepts around Donald Trump, around Charlie Kirk, and around everything conservatives doing to bankrupt the way in which we learned civics when we was in high school. I ain't even got to believe me. This is what the report say. The Education Department statement said the initiative is dedicated to renewing patriotism, strengthening civic knowledge, and advancing a shared understanding of America's founding principles in schools across the nation. Patriotism according to whom? Patriotism according to the military people that you fired because they said things that you didn't like what they said about Charlie Kirk? The people that's fighting for the freedom of speech. Those civics that we have, is going to be those? When you say strengthening civic knowledge for who? Where we are able to understand we're supposed to have separation of power and checks and balances, and how your administration bankrupting it. When you say advancing a shared understanding of the founding principles, you know what I'm saying, for this country, the founding fathers and founding principles, will it be one that is romanticized as slavery like you're trying to do with these old national parks? We know y'all not providing no details in the types of education materials y'all gonna be using, but based off of who you saying and what you saying, hey, PragerU was trying to teach us that slavery was cool because at least they ain't kill us. And they taught us some things too. Ignoring that we've been understanding agriculture and knowing that we've been having different skills before master got a hold to us. But of course, that's what you want to teach us, huh? DEI is about getting unqualified people positions and taking them out the way from qualified folks. She has no experience in education. I don't even think she's ever attended a public school in her life. She has no education experience in terms of classroom. But now she is being appointed as the Department of Education based off her experience of running WWE and WWF. Hey, what they're saying is that it's always already some white person that is much qualified for the position for just existing. And it's always already people of color, especially black folks, that can work tooth and nail to be able to be having accolades and to be able to, have all type of different experience. But they still see us unqualified because you just an affirmative action high. You a DEI high. Then the man, what you doing?
So in today's dumpster fire of news, on top of all the other bad news that we've had to read in the last few days, today the Department of Education, aka the Department of Propaganda, has announced that they're partnering with Turning Point USA, Moms for Liberty, and the Heritage Foundation to develop a civics curriculum for public schools in the U.S. Let that sink in. You have three organizations who are absolutely anti-democratic, who are homophobic, transphobic, racist, sexist, ableist, anti-immigrant. And these folks want to teach your children about civics in the United States. It is going to be the least educational program possibly in history, at least in this country, because it will merely be fascist propaganda designed to indoctrinate children. As a parent, I'm urging my fellow parents, take your children out of public school. Seriously, homeschool. And don't use whatever curriculum the state wants to send you. Create your own curriculum. Teach your children how to be critical thinkers, how to question authority, how to research history, how to understand how our government is supposed to work when it's not being run by fascists. As for the rest of us, all we can do is resist every day, loudly. Existence is resistance.
So when you thought things couldn't even become even more weird for the Department of Education, they're launching America 250 Civics Education Coalition. And guess who one of the partners are? Turning Point USA. And what is their aim? To bring patriotism back to education. Let me say that again. To bring patriotism back to education. I don't even have to break that down. We all know what that means. It's spooky out here. We need to come up with a plan.
So yesterday I talked about some grants being cut, including some civics education grants. And then today I come across this article where it's talking about all competitive grants will now have to have a patriotic focus. And the civics piece will be including a group co-founded by Charlie Kirk, who, as you know, recently was unalived in the event. So I think it's interesting the timing that this is the release of these new guidelines. There's a difference between civics education and patriotic education. And learning civics and learning about the government is not the same as being patriotic. I mean, you could argue that having a good understanding is truly patriotic, but the patriotic sense that they're looking for is the undying allegiance to one's country, or in this case, one in particular, this current government, that's the current administration. And I think that this is, we talk about indoctrination in schools, and this is going to indoctrinate kids to worship the government, to worship our country, and without looking at it through the lens of some of the atrocities that our country has committed over the years. And so I think if we continue to go down this road, we're never going to have an accurate picture of where we are as a country or what we've done as a country, which means we're bound to repeat and make the same mistakes over and over. So I think taking this lens of civics education and painting it under the brush of patriotism, that what they call patriotism, I think is going to be definitely a disadvantage for students and a disadvantage for communities and for us as a whole of the country as we move forward. What are your thoughts? Do you think that patriotism and an undying and a belief that we cannot criticize our own government should be taught in schools? Or do you think that we should continue with the idea of freedom of speech and the opportunity to criticize those in power? Let me hear your thoughts.
Let's be clear. This isn't about education. This is about indoctrination. The goal is not to teach kids how democracy works. They are actively dismantling democracy. The goal is to train the next generation to cheer for authoritarianism. This is state-sponsored brainwashing, plain and simple. Turning Point USA isn't an education group. It's an incubator for incels, grifters, and trad wife cosplay influencers. Their whole playbook is to weaponize ignorance and sell it back to the country as patriotism. Putting them in charge of civics is like asking Big Tobacco to run your health class.
On September 17th, the U.S. Department of Education had a press conference to release and state that the AFPI, the TPUSA, and Hillsdale College, which is a very conservative college, and over other 40 national and state organizations will launch America 250 Civics Education Coalition. Let's get into it, besties. The mission is that the Education Department statement said that the initiative is dedicated to renew patriotism to strengthen civic knowledge, advancing a shared understanding of America's founding principles in schools across the nation. Why now? America is going to celebrate its 250th anniversary next July. There are some planned events already. They do plan on doing a 50-state college tour that is going to talk about the fundamental liberties, and will have a speaker series. Who's involved? We have the Heritage Foundation, Moms for Liberty, a PragerU, and 1776 Project Foundation, and many more. So the core message is that coalition leaders say America can't survive if values are forgotten. The effort aims to make civics engaging, patriotic, and faith-oriented. Linda McMahon is the AFP lead and the U.S. Secretary of Education. She's going to spearhead the nationwide initiatives to engage students, educators, and communities in conversations about liberty, citizenship, and America's enduring values. Now, the U.S. Department of Education has not released anything yet in regards to the details or the types of educational materials or programming that is going to be used. The coalition did hold its first meeting yesterday on Wednesday. However, they did say that they will be having a robust programming agenda, which will start rolling out in the next 12 months. What to me is ironic is the Trump administration is currently dismantling the Department of Education. And he is giving the educational rights back to the states. So make that make sense. Is that me? Let's get into it. Number one, the politicalization of civics education. The coalition is being led by groups such as Turning Point USA and Hillsdale College. Both have been known for promoting strongly conservative, often partisan agendas. This raises concerns that the civics education will not be neutral or fact-based, but instead tilted towards one ideological. Number two, revisionist approach to U.S. history. Critics do fear, and me, myself, that the initiative will downplay or omit uncomfortable aspects of the U.S. history, such as slavery, systemic racism, or ongoing inequalities, in favor of a more celebratory, nationalistic narrative. This could result in teaching students a sanitized or one-sided version of history. The federal involvement in local curriculum. Although the education is typically managed at the state and local level, the coalition has direct backing by the U.S. Department of Education under the Secretary Linda McMahon. This will create tension about federal overreach, whether states and school districts will lose control over how history and civics are being taught. Number four, exclusion of diverse organizations leading this effort are not broadly representative of the U.S. population's ideological, racial, or cultural diversity. If the coalition sidelines perspectives from educators, historians, or communities outside of political orbit, it risks erasing important voices from civic. And lastly, number five, the framing as patriotism versus critical thinking. The language of renewing the patriotism and shared American values may sound positive, but critics argue it could prioritize indoctrination over inquiry, teaching students what to think about America rather than how to think critically about its history, government, and future. So what do you think, besties? I think this is nuts! And this is scary! Where are we living at? What time is this? And also, I'm already having to read bands that are booked in my own home to educate my children. Now I'm going to educate my kids on proper history to make sure that they're getting the full American history that happened, not the watered down version that this group is pushing. That's it. Let me know what you think. On September.
I also want to post this video because they go together in my mind, and I believe there is a purpose around the speed in which Erica Kirk was appointed as the CEO and president of Turning Point USA, and the announcement that came yesterday from the U.S. Department of Education. So AFPI, Turning Point USA, Hillsdale College, and over 40 other national and state organizations launched what they're calling America 250 Civics Coalition. And this is the description. The U.S. Department of Education, alongside those agencies, launching the America 250 Civics Education Coalition. This landmark initiative is dedicated to renewing patriotism, strengthening civic knowledge, and advancing a shared understanding of America's founding principles in schools across the nation. It was announced after the 17th was Constitution Day, and it builds upon Trump's plan for the 250th birthday of America that's next year. So Linda McMahon, the wrestling lady, is our U.S. Secretary of Education and will spearhead this. All of these organizations are conservative organizations that are being brought on by the Department of Education to build programming that will permeate every space of education that the Department of Education oversees across our country. I get it. Some of y'all swear there is an indoctrination around us putting trans people and gay people on your TV screens. You got Snoop Dogg that is going into a catatonic state when he's watching Lightyear and seeing two lesbian mothers not touch each other and wave at each other across the kitchen in the cartoon. I get it. This is the indoctrination of your children that you think that the queer community is doing. You tell me what foundational values of this country reflects the needs, a space that feels affirming, and a space that will position a Black body for success. Quickly. Where are the Black faith-based organizations? Because you're going to be like, oh my God, what's wrong with Jesus? Where are the Black faith-based organizations? Because again, I said this other day, the work and the legacy of Charlie Kirk has been touted from over hill and dale. I don't know where his church is at. I don't know how I can't see any signs of him implementing his faith into work. I've never seen him lead prayer anywhere. Anything. Nor any of these other agencies. And so I need us to lock in. And if they're creating it for a system like the Department of Education, they will implement this inside of every other system that they control Black bodies in. Mass incarceration, foster care, group homes. All of the folks who are navigating mental health barriers that they want to lock inside of facilities, I bet you one thing they will give them in that facility is this education and indoctrination. This is grooming. This is taking away the idea of free will. This is positioning us to have to do the work to undo what they are positioning as foundational knowledge a human being should have to be a well-rounded adult. Not comprehensive sex education, not learning about the tax law in our country, not even teaching these kids how to cook for themselves or do their own damn laundry, but they're going to bring them into the patriotism of values. And every one of these people in leadership of this, specifically the president, has lived one of the most sinful lives that we have ever seen in public. A multitude of wives, grabbing people about their cooter cat, all sorts of kids out of wedlock. Robert King Jr. living in sin, ain't married. Like, we can go down the list. And they've put together the Avengers of patriotism to teach our black children. So I'm gonna leave this information here. Y'all do with it what you will. Okay? But we gotta figure this out. We got to figure this out. And this is the time that all of those black-led organizations that were doing community-based education need more money. This is the time, Umar, if you ever really had a school you were going to have, this is the time where you actually would have been useful.
So what's new with civics education in the United States? Well, the Education Department is launching a new patriotic civics initiative for America's 250th anniversary and is partnering with over 40 mainly conservative groups like Hillsdale, Turning Point USA, and Moms for Liberty to promote founding principles, civic pride, and patriotism. Now, funding for civics and history programs is being boosted from $23 million to $160 million by shifting money out of teacher training programs that they don't like. Now, supporters, of course, say that this will renew citizenship and shared understanding of U.S. history, but critics warn that it may present a one-sided narrative that glosses over difficult chapters like racism and slavery and politicize what has been a broadly bipartisan field. So if you have an opinion about this, you can submit public comment through the Federal Register. Just Google Proposed Priority and Definitions, Secretary's Supplemental Priority and Definitions on Promoting Patriotic Education. I'll write it down below. Because the results will determine funding priorities, like who gets money and what history will be taught. Please consider submitting a comment during this public comment period. You have until October 17th, 2025 to do so. Because if my reading of the lines and in between is correct, schools that use like PragerU and Hillside in the 1776 project will get funding, while anyone who teaches that slavery was bad will not.
Civics class in the United States isn't just getting an update, it's getting rewritten. The U.S. Department of Education just announced the America 250 Civics Education Coalition, and it's partnering with Heritage Foundation, Moms for Liberty, PragerU, Turning Point USA, Hillsdale, and others. They say it's about patriotic education leading up to the 250th anniversary of the U.S., but look at the track record. In Florida, PragerU kids' videos have been approved as classroom supplements, slipping partisan cartoons into schools. Moms for Liberty has pushed thousands of book bans across the country, with Florida leading the nation in removed titles, often targeting books about race, gender, and marginalized voices. Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 lays out a blueprint for government control of education, cutting out dissenting ideas and promoting a single ideology. We've seen this play before. In 1930s Germany, textbooks were rewritten to glorify the state and erase inconvenient truths. In Mussolini's Italy, curriculum reforms drilled loyalty to the regime above all else. And in modern Hungary, the ruling party revised national standards to enforce nationalism and sideline opposition. When governments and ideology-driven groups control civics, students aren't learning how to think. They're being told what to think. And when you start leaving out or playing down the darker parts of our history, you're not teaching patriotism, you're teaching denial. Real civics education is to create citizens who can question, challenge, and engage with democracy, not just recite someone else's script.
So the Department of Education just rolled out their America 250 Civics Coalition, and you know, at first glance it sounds harmless, and patriotism, civic pride, teaching kids about America. But let's stop and actually look at what's going on. This isn't just a civics program. This is a coalition stacked with groups like Hillsdale College, Turning Point USA, PragerU, Moms for Liberty, the Heritage Foundation, the Claremont Institute, 40 plus groups, and out of all of them, I think only 3 have any connection at all to Black history, and all 3 of those are conservative. There's no input from left-leaning organizations, no balance, no real diversity of perspective. So think about what that says. I'm not claiming I know the exact curriculum they're going to release. It's still early. But in light of what we're already seeing across the country, museums being pressured to tone down their exhibits on slavery, textbooks rewritten to soften racism, governors pushing patriotic education that erases hard truths, it's not hard to connect the dots, right? This isn't about adding civics, it's about controlling the narrative. We continually see this playbook, slavery reduced to a sad chapter instead of being named for what it was, the engine that built the economy. Jim Crow and segregation barely acknowledged, as if 100 years of legalized apartheid doesn't explain the inequalities we still live with. Systemic racism erased completely, because admitting it exists means admitting it's still here. And movements for justice, from abolitionists to civil rights leaders to Black Lives Matter, they get reframed as disruptive, un-American, or dangerous. What kids are left with then is mythology, a glossy flag-waving story where America is always righteous, the founders are beyond critique, and the people who bled, resisted, and demanded freedom are silenced or minimized. That's not education. That's indoctrination. And here's the part no one wants to say out loud. This isn't just about lessons in a textbook. This coalition is tying it all to funding. Schools that adopt their patriotic version of civics will get federal support. Meanwhile, programs that actually serve minority students, programs designed to close opportunity gaps, are being cut back. That's not a coincidence. That's a strategy. It's history being rewritten at the same time that resources are being redistributed away from the very communities whose history they're erasing. So no, I don't know the exact words that'll end up in this new curriculum, but let's not pretend this is happening in a vacuum. Look around, state after state has already banned books, got a DEI pulled down lessons on race, and punished teachers for even mentioning systemic injustice. And in this coalition, add this in, and you're not getting a richer civics education. You're getting a narrower, sanitized one, a history scrubbed clean for political comfort. And, the worst part, this story is barely making headlines. It's getting buried under all the other atrocities happening right now. And if we don't talk about it, it's going to slip by unnoticed until one day we wake up and realize our kids and grandkids are being taught a version of history that's even more whitewashed, more distorted, and more wrong than it already is. So the question is this: do we want the next generation to grow up pledging allegiance to a myth? Or do we want them to know the truth, the victories and the horrors, so they can build something better than what we've handed them? Have a good one.
I don't know where to start from, but this is something they've been fighting for a long time. They've been working so hard to do this. And some years ago, if I am not mistaken, 2 years ago, yeah, Ron DeSantis tried so hard because from his own state, he wanted to change so many things about education, which he actually did. The curriculum was changed, right? And they started removing books. So actually, some states started this some years ago. But now, on a federal level, there are now mandates because, federal government is trying to remove their hands and then push it down to states. And I tell you that the federal government, they have no right anymore to control some certain things when it comes to education in states. So the states are the ones that will handle it. So you all already know how they've been talking about defunding schools, especially schools that are in Black neighborhoods or and also if you do not follow their rules, it means that you will not get state or federal grants. Your school is going to suffer. So in essence, what are they doing? They are trying to remove, like, your his. I don't know how. So I don't know, but I might stutter here a lot because I am trying to grasp why they've been fighting so hard when it comes to anything that got to do with Black people. Why are they fighting so hard? Because this one is now a fight that is not hidden. It's a fight that even when you are blind, you can, even a deaf person has heard that they've been working so hard to remove anything that got to do with Black people. It is nothing new, but I never knew that this particular one is also coming. Like, how did they even have a minister for it? Because what did they, I think she's actually the woman, she's a minister education. Yeah, minister for education. That is more like what she is. But then, what does she know about education? What does she know about education? Linda McMahon or McMahon, whichever one her name is. What does Linda know about education? She's. I think I used Nigerian Ministry of Education. I think a secretary, right? I think she's a education secretary. Yeah, Linda what? Mahon or Mahmon. What does she even know about education? Let me start with this administration is horror. Now, let me tell Black people something, because everything they are doing is, it's for you. There are some things that you don't need to be told. There are some things you need to be told, because there are some things when I post, some people are saying, but this got nothing to do with Black people. Are you not? Are you that? They tell me they did not call Black people's name. Are you waiting for them to call your name? Home education is looking like more like what is going to be if you have the time, or if you can make out the time for your kids. Classrooms are no longer safe, even for your kids, as it is at this point in time. And I don't know, but it's like a little bit of advice. If you have one thing with, if you have a child and your child is not up to, it's okay. Kids easily adapt. If you take a kid to a new environment, the kid will easily adapt, especially if there are kids and all that. I see a lot of people, like, there are some people that have friends, families in Caribbean, in Jamaica, some in Africa and all that. If it is okay for you, you can actually send your child to wherever for education. It's actually advisable. And then let them return when they are like more than maybe time for college. All my cousins, majority of my cousins were raised like that. They did their primary, high school and all that. Then after that, they went back to US for college. They are also American citizens. They were born American citizens too. So either, I don't know how to explain it, but it's also, I know it's not everybody that have friends, loved ones outside United States because you are American. But also I am also saying this, if you have, it will be good too. And there are some schools in Africa that I think, even though you are in United States, you can also send your child to maybe college, and other places, boarding school and all that, but just that you might end up visiting once in a while and all that. Maybe once to twice, I don't know, but quick like that. Nothing is safe. anymore. Classrooms are no longer safe. Your history is about to turn to something else, but I am grateful that it did not. Your history is not something that ended in your history is not just only classroom history. I would rather go in here. The video is too long. Bye for now.